This year marks the 25th anniversary of the proclamation of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. Despite this milestone, the last 12 months have been marred in divisive politics as well as increasing levels of racism and hatred. That is according to the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. My name is Angela Scoogens. This is TVP World, and I'm joined here in our Brussels studio by the new head of the Brussels office for the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, Friso Roscam Abbing. He is here to explain the weight of this milestone during these checkered times. Hi, Friso.
Thank you, Angela, for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on. So how would you categorise, from a European perspective, the state of play when it comes to fundamental rights in the EU in 2025?
Well, we're at a critical time. I think everybody sees how fragile the international world order is. But also here we have to be honest in the European Union. Democracy, fundamental rights and the rule of law are under serious pressure. And this undermines the very foundation of the European Union and the values it's based on.
Where is this pressure coming from?
Well, you see it from different corners. So we have very much pressure on civil society, who are more and more difficult for them to do their job. They see restrictions in their freedom of assembly, of demonstration, freedom of expression is curtailed. They find it difficult to have access to decision makers and to be meaningfully consulted. There are laws who have intended or unintended impact on their possibilities for existence. And finally, they have very serious financial cuts which they face, which really make their entire existence in very big problems.
Is there a reason as to why you can pinpoint that this is all happening? Is it always increasingly getting difficult for people to, access politicians or have transparency from their governments, for instance?
Difficult to say, but we are measuring what we call the civic space, so the area in which civil society operates for already 10 years. And it's very low now, the level of access they find to the decision makers. It's maybe part of a growing culture of othering them against us, of not being able to live in some peace and harmony with each other. You see that also happening in terms of the attacks on the independence of the judiciary. Very worrying. Quite a few politicians in many member states would qualify a judgment, so a legal judgment by a judge, as an opinion, as yet another opinion, which of course it is not. It is a serious judgment which needs to be enforced, but that undermines the credibility of judges and therewith the entire foundation of our democracy and rule of law.
I understand that your agency can't comment on individual countries, but how would you describe Central Eastern Europe? What are the most egregious breaches of fundamental rights that are occurring in that region?
Well, we see big difficulties to attacks on civil society. Their lives is being made very difficult to work. It either be with intended or unintended negative implications of new legislation, maybe qualifying civil society as a foreign agent, including organizations which are there to promote and protect human rights, the freedom of speech which they exercise, protecting the socio-economic rights of people. So that's very problematic. The funding issue is very problematic. And also the protection issue is different now. Whereas it used to be until so far, regrettably, physical attacks on human rights defenders, what we see now, probably a sign of these times, modern times, that they are facing cyber attacks increasingly. So that is really compromising the integrity of their work. Deep fakes are being used. So in terms of what they need is very much cyber resilience as well.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard of that. And these cyber attacks, are they coming from within the member states, or are they coming from outside the European Union? Because my mind went to Russia.
It's always very difficult to pinpoint this. What I think people are generally accepting is that in Central East European states who were linked to the Soviet Union, the countries behind the so-called Iron Curtain, seen from Western Europe, that they are facing 1,000 times more cyber attacks or disinformation grounds than others would face. So they are under even more pressure of the negative impact of disinformation than other member states in the European Union are as well.
And how does that, the cyber attacks in particular, how does that fit in with, I guess, the work of the FRA? Is it because it impinges on people's ability to access accurate information?
As well. That's incredibly worrying, of course, that it's very difficult to have a healthy, sound democracy where you can differ of opinion, but at least you would agree on the same facts. That's very difficult now. In the times I was studying, I could have a lot of different debates with people who I wouldn't agree with, but at least we agreed on the facts. If I take a look at my youngest son who's studying now, it's no longer this. They start disagreeing already on what one perceives as a fact and the other one as fake.
It's interesting that you're highlighting these problems in Central Eastern Europe because obviously a lot of commentators point out the rule of law issues in Hungary and perceived rule of law issues in Poland, particularly historically with the Law and Justice Party. But it sounds like, if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, things are getting worse, despite a new government even in Poland.
Well, I'm not necessarily commenting on Poland alone, but what we do note is that disinformation has a devastating impact on a healthy democratic dialogue and debate in every country, also non-Central and East European states. It's just that the level of disinformation is very much higher there. So it's something which is very difficult to tackle. We know that the European Commission will come forward very soon with the so-called Democracy Shield initiative, which is looking at foreign interference and at disinformation, at the role of civil society, indeed. And so we are looking forward to providing input to the implementation of that initiative, because the democracy within the European Union definitely needs to be better protected. We cannot take it for granted, as we thought we always had, that this was a given. Democracy will be with us. It's under attack, and we all need to take our responsibility in defending, protecting, and promoting it.
That's really interesting. And I wanted to ask you your opinion on whether you've seen any trends, particularly along the countries that border the European Union, worrying trends perhaps with breaches of fundamental rights when it comes to migration or immigration and things like that. Are you noticing any worrying things around those countries that are on the Schengen in particular?
Yeah, well, the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights has relatively recently, 2 months ago, issued a paper on what we call the instrumentalization of migrants, reinforced border guards, scapegoating migrants. Whereas what is very much needed as well is their physical and otherwise their protection. So when somebody arrives as an asylum seeker, let them have access to a fair and efficient asylum procedure. If he's considered to be not a refugee, then this is determined and that person should in principle return. But the access to fair and efficient procedure is instrumental. Migrants who come to countries to work, we're very much encouraging that this is done on the basis of seasonal worker schemes or other schemes which make it just a legal pathway to the Europe, because we all know that due to the aging society there will be a need for additional workforce. But let's organize this and regulate this in a fundamental rights compliant manner. Is your agency exploring the weaponization of migration? I know that this is a particular issue in Poland, with various senior ministers suggesting that Russia is orchestrating the movement of people through Poland
to sow division and create chaos. Is this something that your agency is exploring, or it's not within the remit?
We have looked into this, and this is a paper which we issued on the instrumentalization of migrants, also providing some tools to member states to combat such instrumentalization. So it's definitely on our radar. We have to see if our recommendations are followed up. We're always there to help member states. We need to be there to help them protecting and promoting human rights. It's one of the reasons why we established the office in Brussels. We want to be closer in the heart of the action. And this is where the EU machinery in Brussels is. So we better be there, and we are there now.
I did want to ask you, your agency provides evidence, it collects evidence, data, very well respected. How do you feel that national governments as well as the EU institutions are picking up what you're putting down, essentially? Are they implementing the recommendations that you're giving, or are they at least reading the research that you're providing them?
Well, of course, we cannot be satisfied, because the track record is that there are still very serious violations of human rights. So in that sense, it's not solved. In that sense, a better pickup would be important. I'll give you one example, if I may. We have last year issued a report on gender-based violence. Here we interviewed 115,000 women between 15 and 85 in the 27 EU member states. It found that 1 in every 3 women have experienced over the last year sexual, psychological, or physical violence. This, of course, are unacceptable stats. And in a sense, I was disappointed that it didn't become very highly picked up by the media. But I was also disappointed that it didn't become more on the radar of the member states. So when we are going to relaunch this research with the full reports in March next year, we really hope that there will be a better pickup, and which could lead to awareness-raising campaigns in the 27 member states. This is something which is a big, big problem in almost all societies in Europe. There's no member state singled out. It's serious. We've seen, and this is not something which is limited to, let's say, elderly men only. We have seen this is becoming a growing problem with young boys as well. Just take that Netflix series, Adolescence. Thank you. And this is reflecting reality. So we have to absolutely take it serious. When it was launched, we used the words, and we stick to this, that there is a pandemic violence happening now. There's really a pandemic of violence against women in Europe. This should not be accepted.
Absolutely not. And Europe also doesn't exist in a vacuum. What happens outside the European Union can have real ripple effects throughout the EU. I'm thinking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine as well as the Israel-Hamas war. How have those wars, which is what they are, how have those wars impacted the human rights and the fundamental rights of individuals in Europe?
Yeah. Of course, there are about 4 million Ukrainian refugees living in the EU member states. So that's already a very first effect, that people are forced to leave the country to find shelter and protection in the European Union. Unfortunately, the European Union has installed that temporary protection regime. So on the whole, they're protected, which is very good. It's also where Europe is good at, and it should remain doing this, because they do require our continued support. However, again, female refugees from Ukraine living in the EU member states also face sexual violence as well. We're doing research into this. Now, on the Israel-Gaza war, what we have noticed is that after the 7th of October 2023, we have noted a spike in anti-Semitism in the European Union member states. A last survey we did indicated that I think 93% of all interviewed Jews had identified that they were a victim of anti-Semitism at least once in that last couple of months. Mostly that violence consists of online abuse. but it also can be physical violence or the inability for Jews to live their Jewish life in the European Union. We have also seen an increase into Islam hatred. So this is the direct impact of the Gaza-Israel war on the EU.
Absolutely. And I think we only have time for one more question, but I mentioned that 25th anniversary of the Charter of Fundamental Rights in the EU. What does that anniversary mean to you, despite these tumultuous times which we've spent most of this interview interrogating?
Well, I'm normally never into these anniversaries, because they're so artificial. But at this time, it comes in an incredibly important, critical point in time where we have to be careful not to undermine the European Union based on a set of values, based on rights and freedoms as enshrined in the Charter. So this is the time where we, as the European Union, need to remember the very foundation upon which we are built, which makes us also positively different from other regions in the world, more important than ever now in this very turbulent times in which the world order exists now. So let's stick to the Charter. We're helping judges very practically and legal practitioners in making a better use of the Charter, ensuring that EU citizens are better protected in their rights. Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to talking to us, Friso. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you so much for watching. My name is Angela Scoogens. This is TVP World, but make sure that you stick around as more news, commentary and analysis is coming up. See you next time.